everyone, my name is Vina, aka Miss WOCReader, and welcome welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my July 2025 reading wrap-up. So July was a month, as some of you who have been regularly following me know, that I went back to work the first full week of July after not working in May and June. So that was an adjustment. I ended up falling a lot on audiobooks and reading physically at night and in between. I had a bunch of books that I was really excited about. Some I didn't quite finish. We are now in the first week of August, so I'm trying to wrap up some carryovers. And it was just a really interesting month, just adjusting to everything. I was spending a lot of my break time not reading but shopping. I'm still trying to get some stuff together. You know, when you start a new job, you have to have the clothes for a job when you're going to be in the office all the time. I had not been in the office during the summer since 2019. So that was an adjustment, coming back into the office during the summer and needing summer office clothes, because a lot of the stuff I used to wear in the summer in 2019 is either got too small or I gave it away because I'm like, I'm not in the office anymore. And I don't have to be as dressy either for this job. Not that I really had to be dressy for my other job, but there were like a lot more people around and in the office. So there's less people around. It's a little bit more casual. And I needed to get a variety of just good pieces, lots of solid shirts that I can rock again and again and style them differently every time, and a lot of everyday pants that don't have like these outrageous prints, so I can easily mix and match things. Some of you have been watching me post my little shorts with my office outfits and hyping me up. I really appreciate it. But yeah, July was a month. Let's get into everything that I read. He Burns by the River is a book that you've heard me talking about for the past few months. It is a Caribbean fantasy. It is historical, set in Trinidad and Tobago in the 1960s. The country is newly independent, and there's a lot of discussion surrounding that and the way the locals are adjusting to the new government, and kind of the doubts about the new government. Like, is it going to be better now that we are separated from England? And we are in this small village of Sapo where they have a great fear of Obia. We are following these two brothers. So we have Roran. He is the main character we're following. He has this kind of competition with his brother. This girl he thinks likes his brother more than him. His brother and he are up for this big spot at a school in England, and he ends up wishing ill on his brother, and his brother does actually fall ill. So it's a little bit of a Cain and Abel retelling with a Caribbean twist. I thought it was very dark and interesting. It's kind of a slow burn. You get a little bit of action and then it eases down again, and then you get a little bit of action and it eases down again. It's a fairly quick read, and there is a lot of dialect. So I know for people who aren't from the Caribbean, the dialect might be a little bit of a struggle. I believe she has a glossary in here though, or at least ended up adding one just to make it easier for some of the terms that people from Trinidad use, because there are some very specific terms. Some things she gets into like a little bit of detail with, some things she just leaves you to figure out with context clues. Overall, this was a fairly interesting read. I enjoyed it. That she really did something ambitious for a YA, and I'm curious to see what she writes next. Love Spells Trouble by Nia Davenport. So this was gifted to me by Bloomsbury. So shout out to them for sending me this book. I was very interested to see what Nia does with this because it was her first YA romance. It is single POV, and I really feel like it could have benefited from being dual POV, and I will explain that. In this book, we're following Kaden. She's a very voicey, very independent, very strong, like fun main character. I love when main characters are like this. I thought she had great personality, which I don't see a lot of in YA recently, so I really love that aspect of it. The book starts out so fun. We're following Kaden, and she lives a pretty good life in Houston. Her mom has a thriving veterinarian business, and her dad owns a bakery in downtown Houston, which she's also a witch. That part was fun. Although we get mentions of her being a witch, we don't really see her use her powers. She doesn't use her powers to solve any of her issues. It's just kind of a thing that she happens to be. So while this was marketed as a romantasy, it's not really romantasy, it's a paranormal rom-com. There is a coven system here where her mom is the witch, and she married her father and kind of got ostracized by the covens because they're all elitist and he's immortal. So Kaden hates the coven system. They've been living peacefully with just her dad's side. Her cousin is her best friend, which I love. I don't see that enough, and I feel like cousins are our first and closest friends, and I just love their close bond. Kaden ends up going on a date with this cute guy. She doesn't realize that this cute guy Kai is actually a witch. When she finds out, she like storms off. However, the next day, because they were spotted together and the pics were put on a blog, everybody shows up to her dad's bakery trying to get some inside information on them. And so they end up agreeing to fake date because it brings good business to her dad's bakery that has been struggling recently. At the same time, Kaden is trying to fight gentrification in Houston. And that's where the book started losing me a little bit. I just don't feel like the gentrification fighting aspect was really well done. It's also interesting hearing them constantly just refer to it as gentrification because, I'm gonna be honest, I live in an area that's been trying to gentrify for a while. And I don't really hear regular everyday people just like drop the term gentrification like that. Like unless we're in an academic setting, unless we're in a very specific setting, I don't really hear people, like especially young people, throw around the word gentrification like that. Even though we are talking about what it is, even though we know what it is, we just talk about like people being kicked out. We wouldn't necessarily keep using the term over and over again. Interesting enough too is the coven system is made up of various BIPOC families, and the coven people are gentrifying the area. So it wasn't the usual like big white baddie who is gentrifying the area. I wanted more magic. I thought we could have gone there more with the magic, seen some wacky hijinks with it. I thought the romance was cute. What kept me reading is Kaden really does have a great personality, and I wanted to see it through to the end. I think Kaden and Kai had great chemistry. I just wanted more of Kai. He was cute, he was sweet, he was nice. He was like agreeing with everything. He was on the right side of things, but we didn't really get any depth with him. And I've been very vocal about seeing more depth in Black boys, especially in YA romance. Because everybody just kind of writes a nice, cute guy, but there's not much to him outside of that. And we don't need Black boys to just fall into archetypes. White boys get to be fully realized boys, and our Black boys deserve the same treatment. So overall, this is a cute, light read. Very fun, but we could have done so much more here. I think if they would have developed the magic part more, if we would have had it be dual POV, that would have just taken it over the top. The Love Dare by Abby Olivelo. So I've read two of her other books, Love in Winter Wonderland and Only for the Holidays. I believe this one was her third book. This one is actually not released in the US. Her other two books ended up being released in the US. This one was not released in the US, and with her first book, I had criticism that there wasn't enough Black British influence in it, and I remember talking to a Black British friend about it, that the names my friend had told me were not names that they would normally use in the UK. I feel like it was weird how we didn't get much of the culture, because if you're Black and from the UK, you either fall into the African or the Caribbean bag, and we never got defined as to what backgrounds the two came from. Even though the book was set around Christmas time when they would have been celebrating specific cultural holiday traditions, we didn't get that. So I thought she corrected some of those issues in Only for the Holidays, which I feel like leaned more towards the UK. This one I feel like finds that perfect balance of feeling mainstream so that people outside of the UK can read it, but still catering to her UK audience. So I'm surprised that this one did not get a US release, because I truly feel like this is her best book yet. Where her previous book, Only for the Holidays, I feel like started feeling a little too overlong and could have ended at time. This one, the length was great. I would have to double check. I think this one is slightly shorter than the other one, so that also helped. But I went in thinking, okay, it's just going to be about Notting Hill Carnival and a romance surrounding that. But Notting Hill was just a small part of it. We are following Eva. I love her. I love a good voicey YA main character, and she had personality. She ends up taking this dare to get this comic book obsessed guy named Saint interested in her, to fall for her. She has her eyes set on this other guy who she's been flirting with back and forth since like the beginning of the year. Mind, this is set, they're like around the 17 age range, but the UK does school a little bit differently. So what they call college is not how we use college here. I feel like here in the US we use college and university interchangeably. In the UK, college is like that end of high school period for us. Instead, they go to college and they're working and trying to figure out what they want to do with the rest of their life before they actually go to university. So keep that in mind. So she is with this guy named Saint, trying to get him interested in her. I loved him. He was just so secure in himself and the things that he liked, and even though he was quiet, he was not a pushover. I thought this was super cute. I thought it had the right blend of culture in it. I ended up listening to some of this on my like commute back and forth from work, and I was just eating it up the entire time. Really solid book. I found the audiobook through one of my local libraries, which was great too. Like, to be able to listen to the audiobook at the same time, because I love the narration here. But overall, very sweet story, perfect for the summer. This book, I realized I still have not written my review yet, for I need to go back and figure out what I'm going to say in my review, but I was generally surprised. So I went in not having high hopes for it, but I wanted to read it to like feel it out for people. It is the second book in the series, but they're not, it's like one of those series where everybody's a different main character, so you don't have to read the first book in order to read the second one. Like, these girls aren't even friends. So the book is part of the Factory series. It's by Aya de Leon. This book was Untraceable. The first book was Undercover Latina. I didn't love anything about the premise from reading about the premise from Undercover Latina, because it was like a Latina girl going undercover, like being white passing to pass as a white girl to infiltrate some kind of racist society. I wasn't interested in that at all. This one, they had asked me about it. I'm like, okay, the premise here sounds a little bit safer, so I will pick it up. In this one, we follow Amani. She's 15. She's a plus size girl. She is Black, but is going to a mostly wealthy white school. Her life ends up being completely uprooted after there's an attempted break-in at her house, and then her house gets burned to the ground, and her mom's like, oh, it's one of my crazy ex-boyfriends, we have to run. And her mom takes her miles away to this black neighborhood to stay with an old family friend. It's a bit of an adjustment for Imani to go from this white private school to this mostly black public school, which it is an adjustment for people who are in that type of situation. So I do appreciate having books where we touch upon that. There was a lot of talk about the way in which we treat black neighborhoods and black schools. A lot of talk which I feel like should be more directed towards parents and adults versus a middle grade audience, because they really don't know, and these aren't the conversations they're necessarily having. So at first it was a little heavy-handed. We get like Wakanda this and Wakanda that, and like a little dash of Hotepery, or whatever the Yoruba version of Hotepery would be. But once the book finds its footing, it ends up being a very interesting mystery. Like, once you push past all the stuff about her learning about black this and black that, and she starts getting more comfortable in her skin, and then the undercover action part starts, where we hear more about this secret society and she's finding out who is actually after them, then it ends up being a very solid read. So I think if she would have leaned more into the secret agent stuff from the beginning rather than trying to make a lot of statements, which again, I am in agreements. Like, I can have a whole conversation about sending your black children to mostly white schools and the things that you need to do outside of that to make sure they have pride in themselves, like the way it hurts their self-esteem and all that stuff. But I just feel like it's a heavy to just throw at a middle grade audience. And I know when she was initially envisioning this series, she was envisioning like a YA audience, and then they had her put it in middle grade because YA doesn't like 14 and 15-year-old protagonists. But even so, I think for a YA audience, that kind of messaging was just a little bit clunky. Definitely more messaging that should be aimed at the adults who are actually the change makers. But I thought this was pretty solid. I ended up giving it 3 stars because it did get better in the second half. And I would be interested in reading something else from this author. Maybe I have read something previously by her, an adult. I'd be curious to see what direction the 3rd book goes in. I read Let It Snow by Michelle Stimpson, and it was an audiobook that was narrated by Journey Smollett and Kendrick Sampson. This was my Christmas in July read. I didn't really do too much talk about Christmas in July this year because I just didn't have any books that I was interested in. The past 2 years have been a struggle bus finding Christmas books, but I was very hopeful with this one. I think it started out very, very cute. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be nice, it's going to be light, it's going to be short. I made a mistake. I didn't look at the writing time properly. This was not a short book. This was a full-length novel. Audible, when they first started doing originals, were doing more novella type of stories. But now they're just flat out doing full-length audiobook novels. And then if it's popular, the author will later sell the print rights so that it can be released in print form. The book started out very cute. We're following a teacher. She's going to go to Jamaica by herself because her best friend got in this new relationship and had to flake on their vacation together. She doesn't like to be home for Christmas since her parents ended up getting divorced. They end up getting snowed in at a freak snowstorm happens in Texas. They end up getting trapped at the airport. Now, super cute premise, very Hallmark movie. And I was enjoying it a lot at first, but then it took a nosedive because it just became so heavy-handed talking about single mothers, and there were some children in the airport, and why single fathers get praised for doing the bare minimum. And there was this big thing about her making sure that these kids in the airport had a great Christmas, and when she had met the cute guy by then, so they were vibing and stuff, but then I just felt like I was being lectured with some of the conversations, and I started losing interest, and I don't feel like the book ever really recovered from there. A Poor Man's Prose by Jahid Wilson Jr. This one was a Simon Maverick release. You can also buy the ebook through him as well. He independently published that. But this Simon Maverick is this imprint from Simon & Schuster where they do audiobooks for indie books. So they don't do the print stuff, they just do the audiobook part. And I'm wondering if it would have been a different experience if I just completely read it like with my eyes versus listening to it, because I don't always love listening to fantasy. And this started out very interesting. I got a lot of the same feelings initially that I got listening to this that I felt when I was reading Blood at the Root. However, Blood at the Root is definitely a stronger narrative. A Poor Man's Prose, we follow this 17-year-old boy. He has a very tight-knit circle of friends. One of his friends dies in an accident that was partially his fault, that he feels responsible for, and he's trying to use these special powers he has to bring her back to life. Some of his magic is linked to his ability to write words and write poetry. So much of this book spends its time just like waxing poetic about writing as a whole. At one point we even end up in this writing workshop, and I'm still not sure, and I would have to go reread how we truly got from A to B to even get to this writing workshop and what the purpose was of this program. But I was in and out. Like, I thought the friend group was great. I love the use of AAVE in here because I don't read a lot of Black YA that sounds like Black kids who I hear in the streets. So I love that aspect of it because I feel like so much of the books that are published cater to one specific Black representation, and that's usually Black suburban representation. So here we were catering to the Black kids who just live in Black neighborhoods, who live in the South. There was, oh my gosh, if you are not a fan of pop cultural references, this one is riddled with them. Like, it was like this and this and this and this and this, and it was references I definitely understood, but like at one point early in, it was just like bam 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 bam, like so many of them back to back to try and explain a flashback, and I feel like we could have done without that. So I left this book feeling very middle of the road. Like, I was curious to see how he was going to fight the big bad at the end, but so much of the middle was just like, okay, and this happened, that I was left feeling a little bit indifferent. And I didn't write a review for this one because I wasn't really sure what to say. Like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't a standout story for me either. And I've come to realize I really don't like books that just like wax poetic about writing and reading, and just like glorify that and make it the whole character's personality. I did like what this book was saying about grief. There was a little bit of feminist lecturing in here that I could have done without. Like, it just felt like pandering to me instead of what it was really trying to do. So I would actually love to see more people read this just to give me their thoughts so we could really discuss what's going on here, because I don't know, it was a little up and down for me. A Murder for Miss Hortense by Mel Pennant. I was very intrigued by this one. I think this book is perfect for those who like a BBC mystery, those BBC dramas. This one follows Miss Hortense, and it crosses two time periods, the 1960s/70s and the early 2000s. So Miss Hortense is a Jamaican immigrant. She came over during the Windrush generation. For those of you here in America who don't know about Windrush, basically after World War II, England reached out to the people in the Caribbean who were still under English rule at the time and was like, come over and help rebuild England. You're a citizen. We have space for you. Great opportunity. Because, you know, people weren't really getting paid-ish on the islands. They went over there in droves. Like, the ship that they went on was called the Windrush, so that's where you get the Windrush generation from. So it was Jamaicans, Trinidadians, some Guyanese, some Lucians, all these different groups from the English-speaking Caribbean. Now, there's been a lot of controversy because in recent years, England has been like, oh, hold up, y'all aren't actually UK residents. Like, y'all thought you were citizens because you were born a citizen in your island at the respective time. Those islands are independent now, so you are not actually a UK citizen. I'm not going to pay you your pension. So there's been a lot of back and forth with that because they don't want to pay these people their pension. Some people end up deported. It's been a whole drama because some of these people went over as little children. They don't know anything but the UK. They don't have family ties to those respective Caribbean countries anymore. Because being a Caribbean immigrant or being like the second generation, it's very different because you're not as closely connected as the people who grew up there. Even when you live in a community full of other people with the same heritage, I feel like with Caribbean people, they kind of assimilate more when they leave versus with the African people, they get in groups and they're just more into upholding certain traditions. But A Murder for Miss Hortense follows a woman who is a Windrush immigrant. She worked as a nurse. She was in a tight-knit community where, because the banks wouldn't lend to them because they were black, they had to come up with their own lending system, and that worked out really well for them. Then Miss Hortense gets pushed out of this lending system by this other woman who wants to be the head person in charge, and she feels ostracized from the community. She's not as connected to them anymore. And then years go by. All of a sudden it's like, oh, Miss Hortense, come back, we really miss you. Then this lady ends up murdered. And other people connected to this lending society start to disappear as well, or killed as well. And Miss Hortense was somewhat of an amateur sleuth back in the day, so she has to kind of pull out her detective hat again and figure out mystery. So if you like cozy mysteries with recipes, you're for a treat with this one because there are some classic Jamaican desserts that are mentioned here by recipe, and they're, unlike some books where they're at the end, this one kind of drops the recipes in the middle. I listened to this entire book. I didn't have it physically, so it was truly like listening to a radio drama. It was like listening to a BBC drama. I had a good time with it up until the 78% mark. I feel like it peaked around that time. I'm like, okay, the mystery is done, it's over. But then it just kept going, and I feel like it was dragged out a little bit too long. I did read something about this publisher not usually doing mysteries, and I think that's where they fall short, in that they don't usually do mysteries, but they decided to pick up this one because it was so unique. You didn't have the right editors in place to know when the mystery could have ended and should have ended. Now, it ends on a cliffhanger that is clearly a setup for a book 2. So if you like book 1, you have something else to look forward to. I do think it was a very interesting story. I would be curious to see what she does in book 2. I ended the month with Bones at the Crossroads by Ladarian Williams. Shout out to Ladarian and Random House for sending me an arc, which I was cutting it down to like the edge, like trying to finish it, in time, and I ended up finishing it, I think, on release day, or the day after release day maybe. But this is the second book in a series. Blood at the Root was an interesting read. There was a lot of things going on in it. Shay and I did a whole live discussing it, and I'm waiting for her to finish so we can talk about this one too. I think this did such a great job as the second book of building on the foundation laid in book one. Malik is settled into college now because fall semester has started, and we don't start on the first day of fall semester. We are like a couple of weeks in, so he knows his classes, he's got his crew that he's met during the summer, he has a work-study job, and he's just going. There was some secrets and some mysteries that came over from book one, where one particular one I feel like was dragged out too long. That shouldn't have taken months to get a true answer to. I just feel like we did that typical thing that some of these books and shows do, where they drag out something that realistically in real life you would not drag out like that. You would have had the conversation earlier. But besides that, I liked the campus. We got to see a lot more of it. It's homecoming season. Some of Malik's friends are interested in pledging different sororities and fraternities. I thought that was interesting to have him interested in a sorority or like a fraternity during freshman year. I mean, I think most of the people who are surrounding him are not freshmen, so he's like the only freshman around. And normally those types of groups just let you settle in first. You can't pledge your first semester. But there's a lot going on with homecoming. Malik ends up nominated for the court. A couple of his friends are trying to get on the court. A lot of people had something to say about the queer representation in book one. A lot of assumptions were being made which were incorrect. And in book two, like, it really goes, we're here and we're queer, and we have some of the tough conversations about queer identity and the way in which it's received in the Black community. I thought those were really well done. I am not used to hearing those types of uncomfortable conversations, especially not on page, so it'll really make you think. We get a lot more of the magic and the lore, so I was pleasantly surprised to see a specific character from African American folklore that I was just saying to myself I don't really see too often in books. And we had these different characters involved. I love the adult involvement along each step of the way here, because when you're in college, you are an adult and you are free to run around and do your own things, but you still have older people to guide you, and I feel like that's where YA tends to miss. They try to make these teen characters way too independent, when realistically you would be falling back on somebody who's a little bit older than you to see you through sometimes, while also learning to make your own decisions. There's a little bit of a romance here. I think if you had a problem with the romance in book one, you are really going to appreciate the stuff that's said about that, but also appreciate this new girl who has this great connection to Malik. This was heavy on the music mentions. Music was a key theme and a key way to connect characters through here. I'm not a big music person. Like, I'm like more of a book, mindless TV type of person versus music. So like after a while, the music, I'm like, oh, this is a lot. Like, we're getting a lot of music mentions here. But I think if you are a music person, you'll kind of see how different songs affect them throughout the story. I thought there was a lot of action packed into this one, like a lot of action, but it did not fall into the book 2 slump. Things kept moving. We got new answers. There were some secret societies uncovered. I'm very curious to see how this series ends. I gotta shout out the 2 picture books I read during the month. This one is Summer Island. This is by Deborah C. Mortimer and illustrated by Ken Daly. I got this one for my cousin for her baby shower that is happening soon, and I read the author's bio and I just thought it was perfect because the author is Jamaican and Venezuelan, but her family live in Trinidad and she grew up in Trinidadian culture, visiting them during the summer. I think this is perfect because like my cousin has somewhat of a similar background in that she has some ties to Venezuela, but also born and raised in Trinidad. This book does a great job just depicting the island and what it's like to go from America to your parents' country, be around your family, enjoy the food, enjoy running around with your cousins and being carefree, because island life is very different. And overall, I think that people will enjoy this one for their kids. I am very excited to see how she's going to react to this one, because it'll be great to share with even her older kids. They don't get to go back to Trinidad like that, and when they do, it's a big celebration. They haven't been back in a while and they're trying to go back soon, but you know, it's hard when you have kids and private school tuition to pay to go back. We didn't get to go back a lot either, so when we did, making those memories was great. And I thought this just really did a great job depicting the beauty of the Caribbean. Fish Fry Friday by Winsome Bigham and C.G. Esperanza. This is a companion book to Soul Food Sunday. In this one, we follow a child spending the day with their granny. They don't usually spend Fridays with granny, but when they do, they see that she gets up very early when the sun is barely up and goes out fishing with her friends. She is considered the lucky one. She's always like good at catching them, and once they catch enough fish, they go home, they gut them, they clean them, they batter them, and they fry them for family dinner. Now, I appreciated this because not only were the illustrations gorgeous, but it speaks to a tradition so many of our families have, whether it's here in America, whether it's in Canada, whether it's in the Caribbean, Africa. So many of us grew up frying fish. Friday is a pretty significant day for fish fries, especially coming from a religious background. I know there's a Baptist church around here that'll do fish fries during Lent, and just like battering the fish, smelling the hush puppies, getting to eat the good food and conversations. I love that this was cemented in this story. That was everything I read during the month of July. Let me know if any of these books sound interesting to you. I will link them in the description box down below. If you like this video, make sure and hit that like button. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!